All right, so this is going to be a hopefully quick rant, probably not, of over Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. Game's going to be properly just info dumped in about 2 days now. It's going to be having its big update on the 26th during the Tokyo Game Show. Not sure if they're going to have a separate video from that, but from what I understand, it's going to be over 50 minutes long. I don't think there's a lot that you can miss in terms of information with 50 minutes to work with. So I'm assuming that the majority of what we want to know about this game is going to be known after the 26th. That being said, I want to take this opportunity to sort of voice some of my thoughts on the game, mostly what I would like to see. And I want to just put this out there before this video comes out, obviously, in the 26th, because at that point, everyone will know whether or not these things are going to be in the game or not. So we all already know that this is it's a pretty big deal to have a licensed Zelda game. Essentially, it's not entirely developed by the Zelda team. They are involved in the development, but this is a Koei Tecmo production. This is their game, but it is a Zelda game, and it's not just some kind of random spin-off. It's telling a real proper Zelda story, and a story that fans have been wanting to hear since the original game ended. You know, since before the game even came out, people wanted to hear this story, and now they're doing it, and they're doing it in a way that I imagine most people weren't expecting. Most people probably thought this would be a form of a DLC. I thought if they ever were going to do a DLC for something like this, it wouldn't take place during the Calamity, but before the Calamity. So everything that took place prior to the actual destruction of Hyrule, to kind of give you an opportunity to explore and experience the world of Hyrule before it was decimated. You know, like that just seemed like the most natural thing to do, especially with DLC. Ended up not happening. We got the Champions Ballad and the Master Trials as well instead. And I feel like a lot of people were disappointed by the DLC because they felt like it was a missed opportunity. But now we kind of see why they didn't go in that direction. We see it both with the fact that they're making a sequel, which I'm sure will fill out any possible, story beats or gameplay and things that they wanted to implement in the first game. I'm sure will now be implemented in the sequel. Pretty much anything that the developers wanted to put in the first game will be in the sequel. But now we have this prequel, which means that Enuma very much wanted this story to be told just as much as the fans did. We know that the Zelda team are heavily involved in the gameplay direction, and I want to talk about gameplay direction specifically, because we know that they said they helped with gameplay direction, they helped with story direction, dialogue, graphics, those things are like graphics, dialogue, and cutscenes and story. Anything that has to do with story makes perfect sense. Anyone's going to watch that trailer and go like, oh, this is Breath of the Wild. Oh, it's not. It's actually a Warriors game. You're first going to think it's a Breath of the Wild related thing. Like if you just watched it with no context connected to it, like someone just showed it to you without telling you what it was, you would think that it was Breath of the Wild. Without a shadow of a doubt. There's no like weird, like, oh, like this clearly is trying to look like Breath of the Wild, but it's not quite there. Like it just looks like Breath of the Wild. So the Zelda team's involvement is very obvious when it comes to the look of the game and the sound. The sound and the look of the game is all Breath of the Wild, right? But gameplay, the moment you hit a button, the moment the controller is in your hand and you're controlling Link, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is a Warriors title, no doubt about it. So I don't want to try to get people's hopes up through this video, trying to let you know, like, oh yeah, like this is like, I'm almost for sure that this is what the Zelda team mean when they say that they were involved in gameplay direction. I don't want to get that kind of idea. Just go into this game assuming it's going to be a Muso title, telling the story of Age of Calamity and nothing else. And that's what I'm thinking it is too. But as far as where I think that they could go further is the gameplay. And the Muso series has always been very simplistic, and I'm totally fine with that simplicity, so as long as there's at least one, just one piece of Zelda magic, just a little seasoning, just a tad, just a pinch of Zelda love put into this Muso experience. And where I think that they could do that from a gameplay perspective. Obviously, like I said, story, that's all settled. We know that the story, even the music, we could be getting new music tracks. I mean, just from the trailer alone, we heard new music. So, or at least new versions of older songs. And that's really exciting for me because I Zelda music is so important to me, and the idea of getting new music through a spin-off like this is even more exciting. But the point is that we know for sure that we don't have to argue whether or not Zelda's magic is going to be felt through, again, the graphics or the story. That's all set in stone. I want to talk about where we're going to feel that gameplay, that Zelda magic through gameplay. And how I think that they can do that is through basically Hyrule Castle, more specifically Castle Town. I don't need the entirety of Hyrule Castle itself to be explorable. I don't need that at all. That's not what I'm suggesting. I just want that central, fountainhead, just the square, just the town square, just the main castle town that you enter in. With just some NPCs walking about just like they would in Breath of the Wild. You got some shopkeeps, on the sidelines and everything. And this would essentially, Castle Town would act as a central hub for the player. And here you will have your weapons sheathed. There will be no mobs of enemies to find. There will be no enemy encounters whatsoever. It will be a completely peaceful hub area. And here is where you will select your missions. So instead of doing what you would typically do in any kind of like Muso title, where you usually go onto some sort of like static menu screen, with like maybe like a picture of like a Goron next to his shop or something while you're upgrading your character or crafting stuff. Instead of that, turn this static menu screen again into an hub area. This castle town area doesn't have to be very big, doesn't have to be all that detailed. I just want, even if it's just like I said, even if it's just a pinch of that Zelda magic, which in this case would be the feeling of being able to just explore just like towns and whatnot, because they claim that this is the only game. The director of Koei Tecmo claimed that as this project came to light, they realized that this is the only game that let you experience the world of Hyrule 100 years prior to the original Breath of the Wild. Basically confirming that we won't be getting much more information on this timeline and this, the Age of Calamity in Breath of the Wild 2. I'm sure that there will be maybe a little bit here and there. I'm sure that they maybe might put it in diaries and stuff like that, or stuff that you can find in the environment. Just stuff that you can see. Environmental storytelling would be able to, in the sequel, potentially talk a little bit about what happened 100 years prior. But I imagine that what this director is essentially saying is, hey, Breath of the Wild 2 is going to go in a super crazy different direction and tell a very, very new story with new stuff that we've never seen before. Breath of the Wild is Breath of the Wild, and we all played it, a lot over the last 3 years. So I'm sure that you are all, well acquainted with that world and that version of the story. But then Age of Calamity, the Hyrule Warriors spinoff, is going to be the only game where you can truly experience the world before it was destroyed. So if that's the case, if this is our one and only opportunity to see this world before it all went to hell, I would love to be able to explore it in a more peaceful manner. I want to see why this world is worth saving. A major part of the experience of the original Breath of the Wild is to sort of just explore this world at your own leisure. And that's kind of what I did myself. I was like, I don't have too much incentive to go down this road. I just want to go out and explore. But as you explore, as you discover, as you meet characters and NPCs, this new goal begins to stir within you, or at least it did for me, where I was trying to ignore the main story. I was trying to just go where my curiosity led me. But my curiosity kept leading me towards characters and people and places that were related to the main story. And whenever I would talk with them and I'd start to get to know them, I started to understand what the game was doing. Yes, you are free to go wherever you want. Yes, you can ignore the main story if you want. But because everything in the overworld can be used to further your goal, your main goal of taking on Ganon, whether that's becoming stronger through the the battle system, and you just become better and better at it, and you get better and better weapons. Maybe you have just a better arsenal. Maybe you have just went through a lot more shrines and you have a ton of hearts. Maybe you have more stamina. Whatever it is that you have been doing throughout the overworld, you are unknowingly or even potentially unintentionally furthering your goal of defeating Ganon. Like, a lot of people have already talked about this. It's essentially everything that you do in the game is relevant to the main objective. Nothing you can really consider just only a side activity or a side quest, because even the side quests can help, once again, get you closer to that goal, because you can take on Ganon whenever you want. So it's only really up to you when you want to go take on that final boss. And for me, the whole point of that experience and why they want to make everything related to that one experience is so that you can have that feeling of like, well, you know what? I'm not going to do the main story. I'm going to go out in another direction. I don't care about Ganon. I don't care about saving Zelda or Hyrule or any of you people. I'm just going to go have fun and do my own thing. But as I said, this new desire starts to fill you up when you start meeting these characters and you start really, again, assuming that you did like them and you were enjoying the characters that you were interacting with. I really did, and I found them very charming. And all I ever said to myself was like, oh, so this is why I'm saving Hyrule. This is why it's so important. This is why it's like that becomes your emotional motivator. It's like the story motivation as opposed to your gameplay motivation, because you always have gameplay motivations to do what you want to do in a game, especially like one like Breath of the Wild. You're like, oh, I did that because it was fun. Oh, I did that because I wanted a better weapon. Or, oh, I did that because I wanted to, solve some puzzles. You do everything in Breath of the Wild because you genuinely want to. But how do you get people to want to do the main story, which is, once again, it's a story related thing. And for me, that was going in any direction, like literally just like, I'm just going to go left and just see where that takes me. And once I did that, I slowly find myself meeting these characters and going to these villages and hearing their stories and how they survived the Calamity. And all I think to myself is, I want to help these people. I want to save them. I want to get them out of this rut. I want to save Hyrule so that they can live in a more peaceful world, one where they're not constantly worried for their children's and their friends and their family's lives. And the fact that a game can make you feel that way for, NPCs, I think is a big thing. But what I think that this game could do to even further that is to show us, like, well, here's the world that you're fighting for. Like, here's the world that you're striving to recreate. And Hyrule Warriors can show us that world. It can give us like a greater look inside of it. And not only that, they can let us be in it. And like I said, I feel like that would be a hard thing to get people to feel if it's only through like cutscenes, like if you're only getting cinematics that occasionally put the characters in a peaceful scenario so that they can have time to sort of just talk and build their relationships and all that without constantly, frantically worrying about the fact that the world is about to end. That would be very hard to do in a game like a Warriors game, because like I said, almost 99% of the time you're going to be engaged in combat. So you're not going to really have that time to really sit back and just sort of like, again, just like it's just the stop and smell the roses kind of situation, like I want to be able to see, again, if he is correct in his claim, the director of Koei Tecmo and the director of Hyrule Warriors is what he says is to be believed. This is going to be the only game where we get to experience the world 100 years before the fall, before the Calamity. So if that's the case, I would rather experience this world when it was peaceful as opposed to when it was like trapped in warfare, because then we're kind of stuck in the same situation. It's frantic, loud, epic, day of destruction, I guess you could say. It's the actual day the destruction happened. And then you have the aftermath 100 years later, which is sort of just this quiet, desolate, very sad, but also kind of beautiful environment that's just kind of showing you like, hey, like the massacre is over, the tragedy is over, but the aftermath, like you can still very much feel it.